And welcome back to TL Talks podcast. I am TL. It's great to have you. We're gonna get right into it. We have a interview coming at you, hard and fast. Quick reminder: like and subscribe if you like the content. I appreciate it in advance. Starting off with the first segment, which is called the thought of the day. Thought of the day for this month, which is August of 2022, um, is about something that I recently dealt with. So my uncle Jim passed away recently. Unfortunately, um, he had a stroke unexpectedly. Unexpectedly, he had some issues with blocked arteries and strokes in the past, but we thought we were kind of in the clear with that, and so it was not predictable. Um, Death is always hard in general. My thought of the day has to do with a realization that I've come to, and I'm 41 years old now, so I'm realizing that the older that I get, the harder it's becoming to deal with things like loss. Um, I'm not sure what to attribute that to, but I just know that it's true for myself. I think as you get older, you've had so many life experiences, and you've had disappointments and loss, and life can just be hard at times. So I've just noticed that the older that I get, the harder it becomes to deal with it. And for whatever reason, it feels like when somebody dies that's important to me, it's like a bigger chunk of me is gone, if that makes sense. And so that kind of hit me hard this week. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. Maybe you can relate, maybe you can't. Maybe you're not at that stage of your life yet. Um, but for what it's worth, that's my thought of the day. Moving on to the next segment is called If I Were President. My topic for this month for If I Were President has to do with something I think I may have talked about before, but I didn't get into many details about that. So it's about the school system and how the school system should be radically changed, in my opinion, to to teach kids how to learn real life applications of things that will help them in their adult lives. Examples of that would be credit, how to build good credit, how to keep good credit, how credit works, tricks of the trade. If you're an adult, you realize that credit follows you everywhere. It can have a positive or negative effect in your life based on decisions you make as an early adult. And I think a lot of people don't really know that. So they make silly mistakes, then they have to suffer the consequences. So I think that should be in our school system. I think there should literally be a class that teaches you about credit. Another example would be real estate. Maybe I'm biased because I'm a real estate agent, but I think that that should also be a part of our curriculum for just in the school system in general. As far as the basics of real estate, how the housing market works, the fact that it ebbs and flows and goes up and down with interest rates and um, you know price points for houses. It goes up and down, and how to buy a house. Just the simple to dos, right? So as a real estate agent, there's certain things I would go over with my clients, especially first time home buyers that don't know the basics, and just letting them know how that looks, right? How it looks from going to a showing, liking the place, us submitting an offer, that offer is accepted. Now we're under contract, and then the next 30 days, give or take, could be shorter, could be longer. How that looks, what things you want to be expecting. Earnest money is due within 3 days. Um, that's usually about 1% of the purchase price. The inspection is done within the first week, and then there's an appraisal done with about a week before closing. And so just all that basic stuff, things that are not common knowledge but should be. I think that everybody should know that. Everybody should know how to build credit. Everybody should know how important credit is. Everybody should know how to buy a house, what you need to buy a house, where your credit needs to be, how much money you need to have set aside, all the things that are tangible goals you can give somebody to build towards as an adult, um, would just put us in a better place as a society. Lastly, I'd bring up child rearing. So, they say like you're never ready for a child, and everybody says like you're never going to be ready. So you have a child and you figure it out. Well, I guess it's a fair point, but what I think is the school system should help you with that. I'm not saying they should, give you a child to raise while you're a teenager. I'm saying that they should give you tools on to dos and not, what to do and not to do as a parent. I think that some things are just common sense or should be common sense, but they're not to some people. And so I think that could literally have a generational effect on people if you taught people from an early age how to parent, how to raise children the correct way. The you know I could literally visualize the whole course, like raising a child from when they were born until they're 18 and they're an adult. That 18 years, it could be a course, it would be broken up, right? In a semester or a full year, you go through, okay, this is the baby stage. This is, infancy. This is, young childhood. This is teenage years. And then, obviously getting closer to 18. It would be easily broken up in those sections, but how to raise a child to be a functioning member of society, to be a good person. Um, I think that should just be normal curriculum that everybody has to take a course for. So they can't really claim ignorance because they've learned it at an early age. Those are just three examples of things that I would put in the school system that would be mandatory across the board, and I think could benefit our society as a whole. And it's a shame that they're not already doing that. My next segment is called TLRantz. TLRantz has to do with something silly. It's social media related, but it does bother me. So I'm gonna get it off my chest. So there is a person on a Netflix show. I followed him on Instagram and I noticed something about his profile. It said that he has like 12 million followers, but he's following zero people. He is following zero people. He's being followed by 12 million. He is following zero. So that kind of struck me as odd. And I thought about it. And basically, my conclusion is I've seen like two or three people now with that same thing, following zero people. And my conclusion is that who do you think you are? Like, do you think you're so important that people should follow you, but you shouldn't follow anybody else? I'm not saying that you should be following 12 million people. I'm saying you should be following somebody. Obviously, somebody interests you. Obviously, Instagram interests you because you made an account. You should be following somebody, whether it's, your idol, your mentor, your favorite sports, something, dude. The fact that you're following zero people tells me that you are completely self-absorbed. Like you literally only care about, you know what I'm saying? So that's my TLRantz for the this month. Moving on to football talk before we get into the interview. First, my Cleveland Browns. So my Cleveland Browns won their first preseason game. It was an ugly game. We looked sloppy. It cracks me up how people talk shit about Deshaun Watson. He went 1 for 5 for 7 yards, and everybody's like saying, "Oh, he had a horrible first game, horrible debut for the Browns." Come on, like, did you not watch the game? You know what I'm saying? Like, he threw 5 passes. He was in for 3 drives. 2 of those passes were dropped by Anthony Schwartz, who I'm completely done with. I want us to like release him or trade him for a 7th-round pick tomorrow. So out of 5 passes, he threw 3 catchable balls, which is pretty good. That's over half. He overthrew Schwartz when he's rolling to the left, throwing on the run, and he threw a low ball to Felton on 3rd and long that I couldn't really tell if it was catchable or not. Let's say it wasn't. Okay, 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 is pretty damn good. Okay, so regardless of what you think about Deshaun Watson as a person or off the field, I only care about what he does on the field. And so throwing 3 accurate passes out of 5 after not playing football for 2 years, it's pretty decent. I'm looking forward to the season. Obviously, Browns have an awesome roster. I just heard a rumor, actually, just like before I got on this podcast, that we could know as soon as tomorrow what the final decision is about Deshaun Watson's suspension. The first judge said 6 games. The NFL wants like a year. What I've heard through the grapevine is Deshaun Watson would agree to 8 games, and Roger Goodell won't agree to anything less than 12. So what's in between 8 and 12? 10. My prediction is 10 game suspension. Might come out tomorrow. We'll see. Moving on to the Denver Bandits. If you don't know, you probably know, but if you don't know, I coach a women's tackle football team in Denver called the Denver Bandits. They are an up-and-coming team in the WNFC, which is our league. And I could not be more excited about this team. I mean, I could talk for hours. They recently hired a new offensive coordinator. His name is Rashad Ray. Rashad Ray, if you know anything about Colorado semi-pro football, is probably the most respected coach in Colorado semi-pro football. So he was the head coach of the Greyhawks, which is a semi-pro men's team, which has been the best team in Colorado for like close to a decade now, and not even close, like the best by far. And so just dominant. That's a dominant team in Colorado. He's been the guy in charge of that team since day one. So that guy finally is done with semi-pro men's football and wants a new challenge. And fortunately for us, that is the Denver Bandits of women's football. So I am so stoked. Like, this guy's amazing. He's an amazing coach. He's a great guy. I want to learn stuff from him. I want to get with him ASAP to talk about women's football and, help make sure this transition goes as smoothly as possible. But I could not be more stoked. I mean, words can't even explain how excited I am for us getting him and just this next season. I can't wait for everything. So go Bandits. Lastly, before we get into the interview, is something I told you about, the transfer portal. So about a month ago-ish, I started a new thing on Facebook called the Women's Tackle Football Transfer Portal. What that is it's a free tool for players, women's tackle football players, that want to go to a different team, whether that's because they had a falling out with their current team, they're relocating because of work, they're just relocating it. I mean, whatever, it doesn't really matter the reason. But if they're open to playing for a different team, they can use a transfer portal. They fill out this form. It's 30 questions. We make them a graphic, put it out there. Then teams reach out to me so they get the information on how to reach out to the player to recruit them. And then may the odds be ever in your favor. It's been awesome so far. We have over 300 members on the page. We've had about 20-ish players fill out free agent forms, and about 20-ish teams fill out a different form, which announces what they're looking for in certain positions. Like, this team's looking for a quarterback, receiver, and cornerback. So we make a graphic for that. So we have Mark Howie, shout out to Mark Howie, making the graphics for the free agents. And then he's also making the graphics for the team needs. And then John Lutz, which is one of the owners for the Denver Bandits, is helping me with graphics for when players announce which team they're going to go to. And so that's kind of buttoning up the whole transaction. And it's been awesome so far. So far, so good. Not too many complaints. There will always be complaints. That's human nature. But I'm proud of the product that we're putting out. And hopefully, if you've seen that, you agree. Without further ado, let's get into the interview. My interview is with Mr. Michael Vitale. He is a coach, former coach of the Detroit Demolition, which was a juggernaut of a team before my time. And he most recently coached the Detroit Venom. Awesome interview. Hopefully you enjoyed as much as I do. Here we go. Welcome, Mr. Michael Vitale, to the TLTALKZ podcast. Coach, we talked about a month ago, and our paths crossed. It's been a pleasure talking to you on the phone and staying in touch. And I'm really stoked to have you on the podcast. So first of all, welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. All right, man. So let's get into it. So let's start with whatever you're willing to share about yourself, Coach. Going back to your childhood. I don't know where you're originally from. I know you have a background in a different career. I want to say it's like film or something like that. So
Yeah.
we'll fill in the blanks, but whatever you're willing to share, let's start.
Yeah. Listen, I was born and raised in Detroit and been in and around the area for most of my life.
Yeah.
Took a few years off, was in radio and television for a while. Um, Kind of worked my way down the ladder of success in radio and television. My first job was at the local ABC affiliate, and we ended up winning an Emmy. So from there, it went to radio, and it's tough to win another Emmy, doing anything like that.
Yeah.
First gig, so it was pretty good. And then followed a football path for a while also, and um, about 2000, 2001, got a phone call from 2001, got a phone call from a friend of mine. I had just moved back to the Detroit area, and she said she wanted me to come check out a tryout she was going to go do. And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
Went with her. She went out to work out. I went up in the stands, and one thing led to another. And being the having a lack of filter at that point for no reason whatsoever, other than just being an idiot, I just said out loud, "These quarterbacks are going to kill themselves." And the guy looked at me, turned, and gave me a scowl, and said, "Well, what do you know about it?" I said, "Well, I coach quarterbacks, and I've done this and that." And okay, great. He goes, "Why don't you go down there and talk to him?" And I said, "Are you out of your mind? I would never impose myself to go talk to grown women and grown men that are coaching." He goes, no. I'm the owner of the football team. I'd love to have you aboard. Why don't you go down and talk to him?"
Yeah.
So that led to the 2002 Detroit Danger, which turned into the Demolition, which turned into 6 straight World Championship appearances and 5 rings.
Gotcha. So I played football my whole life, and I've always wanted to be a coach. I always had an idea that I'd be a pretty decent coach, but I never had the opportunity until I moved to Denver, and it happened very randomly, kind of like your story. I just came across a random ad online about a women's football team that was starting. They had everything they needed except for coaches, and the rest is history. Well, my point of that is that was around 2014. So I got out of the military in 2013, relocated to Denver. About a year later is when I started coaching, and I've been coaching almost nonstop ever since. So my point of bringing that up is your previous Detroit days with those 2 teams were way before that, right? So
Yeah.
when I got involved with women's football, I did my best to educate myself about the game. I would fly out to California to go watch San Diego Surge play California, because I knew those are 2 top 10 teams. So I wanted to see the best teams do it in person, right? I wanted to see how they operated, what they did in their pregame, how their coaching is, their play, like everything. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because I wanted to aspire to be one of those top teams eventually. So basically, I educated myself about women's football in general, all the different leagues, the teams, the best athletes. Do you know who Jessica Springer is?
I've heard the name.
Yeah. So she was playing for San Diego at the time. I know she used to play for the Dallas Diamonds. And I think she played a little bit for Chicago, maybe too, but just an absolute monster. I think she is in national weightlifting competitions now, it just as in her free time, but she's like a traditional farm girl that has that strength, you know what I mean? Cause she's been waking up at 5 a.m. ever since she was a kid. But man, to watch her play, she was just a different beast. You know what I mean? I'm sure that's why I was so stoked about having this interview, is because since I'm so ignorant to these Detroit teams, I've heard about them, right? I've heard, how do you not hear about the Detroit Demolition? But I don't know that. I don't know the details, right? I don't know their best players. You've told me a little bit about how dominant they were, but I want to fill in all these blanks, right? About all these intricate details.
Well, I have to tell you, it started off with a whole bunch of drama, and it's funny because
in the beginning,
our last year, 2009, with the Demolition, the coaching staff just retired. We had there was very few things that we were going to be able to do with that particular team any longer. And there was kind of a shift in mood in how things were going to be rolling and how things were going to go
Right.
with the players. And it seemed to have just, it had run its course. We had gone through a 7-8 year cycle with players who had been athletes most of their lives. In 2002, when you're an athlete, you hear an opportunity to play professional football or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Tackle football, nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
It piqued everybody's curiosity in the female in Detroit. Everybody that was into football, women, athletes, they had an opportunity to do something that had never been presented before.
Right.
So, the first year we have, about 75, 80 women come out and we signed everybody. And we just literally went from there.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate. Our head coach, Tony Blankenship, came aboard mid-drama prior to the season. And when I say drama, I mean there was probably 150 women that had come out. And one of the last indoor practices that we had at the original facility, there was a schism that was created because the first set of coaches this owner had brought in just weren't going to work out. They different scheduling issues or whatever the issue may have been. Right. In fact, one of the head coaches candidates was dating one of the players, and it was just an issue in a situation that just wasn't going to work. Yeah. Tony Blankenship comes in, a friend of one of the owners, invites him in, and on a lark, he decides he's going to take this job and does. Mm-hmm. I am lucky enough to be retained by him and took over the quarterbacks. And, at that point, like I said, when you got 75 women trying to try out for a team, I had 6 quarterbacks that were there. So we had to kind of finagle our way just through that position alone. And that's kind of where I'll stick with this, when I explain all this, because it was my position. And to be extremely honest, as a coach, and as you well know, sometimes staying isolated and being with your group is probably the best thing for your mental health and for their learning curve.
Yeah.
On that.
Right.
If I'm not worried about what's going on with the O-line or tight ends or wide receivers or running backs for that matter, or the defensive side of the ball, the better off we all were. And we had very, very lucky, very fortunate. We had former NFL player who was our defensive backs coach. More on him later on. But it was just one thing after another. The team literally split in half. Some wanted this other coach. Some were staying with Tony, and
that happens in semi-pro a lot.
I'm sorry.
That happens in semi-pro a lot. Teams splitting.
Yeah, it does. But it was shocking to me because you're not going to get an opportunity to do this the first time ever again. Now you're going to have to wait for a second-year team, and essentially you're going to be playing with players who are absolute rookies who had an opportunity to play with a team or at least learn with a team for 1 year. Yeah. And that was just, to me, that was a huge, huge mistake for these women who've never played this game before. And it started from there. My quarterback list is just incredible. I was very fortunate to have 6, but 3 quarterbacks that stuck around for the majority of 5 years. And that was tremendous because all of us had a very intimate learning situation. We had an opportunity to learn from each other. And between Kim Grotus, who is a legend, her backup, Danielle Gavin, could have started with any single women's football team. I don't care where they were.
Yeah.
She was an athlete. She was extremely intelligent, one of the smartest football players that we coached. Yeah. and you know that, and the list goes on. But those two right there, you had starting quarterbacks pushing each other week in and week out. You know, year and a half later, we find out that Grotus, was elected to the Hall of Fame in softball. So it's really tough when you're handed a Hall of Fame athlete to be your starter, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, right on. Well, before we dive too deep into Detroit Demolition, which that's going to be a pretty big bulk of the interview, let's
Oh yeah,
start
that's
with
fine.
yeah, let's start with whatever you're willing to share about your upbringing, like your childhood. I know you said
Oh,
you grew up in Detroit, but how'd that look for you?
you, I was a product of the baseball system.
Okay.
My grandfather played in the Tigers organization, and for those of you who know about the Detroit Tigers at all, I was going to be the next Bill Freehan. Okay, I was being groomed to be the next Bill Freehan, um, Tiger legend, and had a chance to meet him a couple of times, um, but it didn't end up working out. And that was, and fast forward, I was an athlete my entire life.
Yeah.
But I was a fat kid. I was a chunky kid. I never grew into my body. That's my problem. I always had huge feet. I wear a size 16 now, and my wingspan is of a guy that's 7'2". I'm 6 foot. That's it.
Yeah.
So big feet, huge arm span. I never really grew into that body. Bounced around a couple of invites in the NFL with some coaches that I had known, and um, went to as a coaching invite to the Raiders and to the Chargers camps way back when, and it was. I knew that there was NFL stardom was not on my route, and that was just not what's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
But I grew up on the east side of Detroit, so we grew up tough. We grew up, with a chip on our shoulders, but and that's the way it was. Um, Life was good, and then deciding to get into radio and television was something that I never actually had thought about.
Mhm.
With a minute background in sports, it was not that I was going to get into sports broadcasting, and it didn't. Although I spent time at Channel 7 here in Detroit, that's the ABC affiliate, and learned a lot and moved on from there. And like I said, went down the ladder of success, not up it at all. So I spent time on the radio. People have heard my voices all over the place, and I enjoyed that ride. But football had always called back.
Gotcha. So if you said you were being kind of groomed to be the next Detroit Tiger great in baseball, how did that go? How did that go from being the reality to your path into football? If you don't mind me asking.
It was a sideways path. I had a work football team that played pickup games. That led me to a minor league team in Lafayette, Indiana.
Uh-huh.
Again, it was kind of parallel to my radio career. Every place I had gone into radio, there was a semi-pro football team there. And then again, one coach sees you and talks to you, or you go to a coaching clinic, or you go to a clinic of some sort, and you're talking to people, and I out of the blue, I get a phone call from a coach. He says, "Come on out. I know what you can do, and I want you to help us in the off season." And that's exactly how things went. Somebody that knows somebody that invites you down, or you invite yourself down to something, and that leads to connection after connection, and that's exactly what it was. The only thing I can say about my personal football career is, if you ever look it up, I was a 6 foot quarterback with absolutely no wheels whatsoever, but I could learn an offense, I could learn a defense, and I could learn how to take that defense apart. And I had, patting myself on the back, I had a rocket attached to my body, which was nice.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't take the most athletic quarterback to throw the ball on a dime, into a window that's about 6 inches wide. So
Oh, for
And that's
sure.
and that's all it was one fortunate thing after another.
Gotcha. So we have a few things in common, Coach. So I play football. Like I said, I play football my whole life. I've always played quarterback most of my life. Then I switched to receiver once I went into college and stuff because I remember I went to a D3 school in Ohio and I showed up to the camp. They had 12 quarterbacks, and one of the quarterbacks was the returning starter. One was like the Ohio Player of the Year, and I pretty quickly figured out it's not looking good for me. You know what I mean? So I switched to receiver and was productive there. I've always been a decent athlete, so I was able to, and you know how that parallel goes, right? If you're a quarterback, you know what you want from a receiver, and vice versa. So that's a pretty easy transition if you can do it. But yeah, we both have that same background. One of the things I want to ask you about is coaching QBs. So the reason that's an interesting question from me is because I have always been a pretty decent player myself, and I feel like I have a pretty good grasp on football. But as you know, just because you're a good player doesn't mean you're a good coach. And just because you think you understand football doesn't mean you really understand football. Doesn't mean you can actually break down a defense and pull apart film and really do the intricate parts that are going to be a part of a championship team. So one of my first questions for you, as far as us having that in common, is in my coaching career, I've been like a head coach / OC. Then I fired myself as OC and hired somebody else I thought I was better in the best interest of the team. And then with this new team that I'm with, the Denver Bandits in the WNFC, I joined as OC. Then I was assistant OC. And then the last 2 years, I've had a new role with a team where literally my only job is like, I call it an analyst advisor. So an analyst in that I break down film for the team. So anybody that we're about to play, whether it's the Texas Elite Spartans or the Phoenix Prowlers, one of the best teams, one of the worst teams, I'm gonna scout them the same. You know what I mean? I'm gonna have all their plays, chart all their plays. It takes a long time, Coach. It probably takes me somewhere between 8 to 12 hours, per team for one game of film. But I do it because I think it's beneficial for the team, the team's chances to win and be prepared. And so that's what I do now. So analyst, advisor. When I say advisor, I give advice to the owners, and sometimes they take it, sometimes they don't. But I've been around the game long enough that I've seen, how to run things. You know what I mean? I've done things wrong, and I've learned the hard way, like most people do. And so I try to help them. I try to help them out to not learn everything the hard way. So that's what I do now. So I guess my first question for you is, what would you say about coaching quarterbacks as far as what puts a coach on a different level? Because there's levels of everything, right? There's a coach that shouldn't even be coaching quarterbacks to a coach that literally can help a quarterback transform herself and become an All-American or a Hall of Famer, or just, she's a piece of clay, and then you build her into something beautiful. What would you say is the difference between those things? Somebody who's just doing the bare minimum, somebody that can really be a difference maker for a quarterback group. What would you attribute that to?
It's interesting because getting back in this year with the Detroit Venom, we didn't have a returning quarterback. Casey Cunningham was the backup quarterback the last few years, and I had seen her in some video and saw her play a few times. And so the tryouts, we had two quarterbacks come in, and one of them got sick and was unable to play this year. But Ali Gorsica, our quarterback this year, had never thrown a football before January 4th at all.
Wow.
Ever.
That's crazy.
So it was, when you talk about having a piece of clay, that's exactly what she was. There's a lot of work that has to be done. And one of the things that coaches who have played and coaches who have coached, and be it male or female coaches, I don't care who it is.
Right.
The fact of the matter is, you have to go into your season with doing the basics again. It's not like there's mini camps. It's not like there's work like the NFL does. You don't see camps all off season where these players are getting together. They're normally getting together with their same team and doing the same things. But the coach's job, you got to go in there, and it's got to be broken down to the basics again every year. Now, sometimes, the first year, this year with Allie, it was teaching her on a daily basis what's going to happen. From footwork. And I will always build a quarterback from the bottom up. You've got to start with footwork. You got to get to the hips. You got to remind them on a daily basis. Your hips are where 90% of a quarterback's power is coming from.
Right.
From your knees to your chest, that's where the power is coming from. Yeah, you got to have a strong arm, but that strong arm is one of the last things you're going to develop or even change. Right. You don't want to change the throwing style. That's just going to create even more issues. But one of the most helpful things I had that you can use now is YouTube. I hate to say that, but get video of whoever your favorite quarterback is. Get a video of Tom Brady. Get a video of Peyton Manning. Get a video of the greats. Get back to Vince Young. No matter what kind of spin the man had, no matter what kind of wheels the man had, he had an incredible body position. Yeah. I was very fortunate to work with FBU for a few years. And there have been some incredible quarterbacks that have come out of there. Marcus Mariota starting in Atlanta, and Marcus has had a tough time in the NFL. But he is not the same quarterback Tom Brady is.
Definitely not.
Okay. But Tom Brady is a machine in his work ethic.
Yeah, he is.
And there was a hijacked video I saw of, a sweating Tom Brady and on a glazed over dewy field, and there was one set of footprints. His, the center where the center was and where the receivers were, but just one set of quarterback footprints, and he was already sweating. What is that telling you about the consistency? Yeah. That's a guy you got to use, So when you're building quarterbacks, use what you can, but understand you got to start every first practice getting back to the basics.
That's great advice. Would you say like it makes logical sense for me to start from the basics every season, because a major difference between women's football and men's football is they haven't been playing their whole lives like we have. And so they don't have, like, some of the language isn't second nature to them, and they don't have natural muscle memory of how to do certain things. And so it makes complete sense to start from the bottom up. So I guess my next question would be, how do you organize that in your head? So like for us, we'll have in January, we'll start doing workouts indoors. And then in February, we'll go outside, full pads, and then we have from February and March basically to get ready to play. Then in April, we start playing games. And we try to schedule at least one preseason game so the rookies have some kind of exposure before it's the real thing. And that's kind of that's a really fast Cliff Notes version of how we do things. Right. So how would you attach that version to how you approach the different sections of coaching quarterbacks? Because you need to get them ready from January to April. Like, do you have it in different sections? Is it just you always start with the basics every day the whole time, or is there an evolution, or how do you know what I'm saying?
Here's the thing. You're absolutely right. Teaching women, it's not a second nature to them. Okay. Yeah. And they're not. Now, let me just tell you, this is now that I know of, that I've been a part of. This is now, let's call it 21 seasons. So 2000. So you're talking 22 seasons of women's football.
Yeah.
At 22 seasons of women's football, no matter what league it was, I don't care. no matter what league it was. You're only talking about the amount of time a young man has played football from fourth grade to college.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're talking in that 20-year period of somebody who has been drilled year in and year out. This is what you're doing, no matter what position it is. I don't care if it's quarterbacks, wide receiver, it doesn't matter.
True.
You're talking about something that is now second nature. It's not to women. Okay, so you're right. Here's the question I have back to you. I'll question your question.
Okay.
Why January? You see, here's my issue with women's football. Women's football has been set up to go from January, when I was starting, from January to August or January to July. We're only going to practice from January. Well, and here's where I'll start hopping up on a soapbox. Why is women's football so adamant that they can only go from January to June or July? Why aren't there combines? And here I am gonna hand over $1 million worth of ideas to you. Why aren't there mini camps? Why isn't there a quarterback camp for the quarterbacks in women's football hosted by somebody in Detroit? I'll do it.
I guess the short answer for that would be that women are devoting a lot of time and energy and money into this sport. They're unfortunately paying to play. So it's basically like a 6-month commitment, give or take, maybe a little bit more, right? So it's half of the year that they're devoting to football, and it's a huge commitment. Now, when that's over, whether you're the Boston Renegades and won the championship or Texas Elite Spartans, or you're a D3 team that went 0-6, whenever your season ends, you have from then until the first tryout, basically, to relax. So all that grind, if you have any injuries, if you want to get away from the team, if there's drama, if there, whatever, you have time, right? So I guess the way it's structured for us, I can only speak for my team, but we have like 3 or 4 tryouts. Those start from like September, and then they go into like November-ish, right? Maybe December at the latest. Then once we know who's on our team, we have a signing party in December to announce that. They, sign the papers, saying their commitment to the team, take pictures, they dress nice little thing. Then after that, it's time to actually put in the work. That's when January lines up for us. My team offers camps, but they're not that specific. So we would offer like an offensive camp run by our offensive coordinator, a defensive camp ran by our DC. And it's obviously it's optional. It's not mandatory,
right.
But it's just free education and free workout basically for people. So we do that. And so I guess to answer your question, I kind of see both sides, right? I think if you're a championship team, there kind of is an off season. You know what I mean? Like you're just always looking to recruit or get better or hire somebody better. Like it never stops. But at the same time, I want to be a little bit empathetic to the players who, for 6 or 7 months, gave a lot of time and energy. And they basically for their mental health, it's probably better to just take a little bit of time off. And so I guess that would be the best answer I have for why it's structured that way.
And I agree. I hear that from the players also. And the Detroit Demolition didn't do that either. There was a shutdown of about 3 or 4 months.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll sit here today and tell you that the football product, no matter what it is no different today at the championship level than it was in 2002 at the championship level, period. And that's where I see, you have this cycle of women's football where you have great teams and then fade off. And then you got great teams, fade off. Listen, the DC Divas has been around for 20 plus years. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. They're a different team they are today than they were when we played them. The Demolition, I mean. Okay. Right. The DC Divas were a powerhouse team. We were very fortunate, in the 4 games that we played them, we won 3 of those 4. They hammered us our last year, but that happens. So getting back to your original question, yeah, there's a lot that can be done in the off season with positions for me for quarterbacks, and still keeping them off field. Meetings like this right here, a Zoom meeting, is fantastic. And I'm sure teams are starting to use that. And if they're not, there's your ideas, folks. Use them up all you want.
Free advice.
What needs to happen is as much as the women need to keep themselves mentally prepared for football, starting in November and December, perfect for the bowl season. You start getting into the bowl season. Now the women start getting into it again. That's great. But if there's going to be a commitment to football and to grow women's football, it's going to have to start being a 12-month sport. Seriously.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. So I think it's interesting. This is a very interesting interview for me because since I got involved with women's football, I did a pretty good job of educating myself about the sport from when I joined until now. Right. So I don't know everything, but I know a lot. Like I know a lot of teams. I know the best teams. I've watched most of them play in person. I've met a lot of coaches. I've networked pretty well. And so I feel like I'm pretty well versed in women's football, current women's football. But the era you're talking about is before me, right? It's pre Terry. So I'm interested in the fact that you said championship games, the level of play is identical from 2002 to the one that just happened.
Absolutely.
And I don't think you're wrong. I think you seem like a pretty honest guy and a straight shooter. And so I don't doubt that that's not the case, but I kind of wonder, I mean, in the WFA, it's kind of like everybody's fighting for second place behind Boston Renegades. And then in the WNFC, everybody's kind of fighting for second place behind the Texas Elite Spartans. So I don't know. I mean, Boston is a different animal. But then this year they didn't have their quarterback and they look like, not as dominant as they were in the past. I mean, if you don't have their quarterbacks are damn good. If she's not playing, obviously it's going to be a difference. But my point is that I think Boston's kind of a different beast. But you were at WFA weekend because remember you asked if I was going to come, and I unfortunately I wasn't able to watch that game. I wanted to. I've been looking for the replay. I know Boston won and it wasn't that close, but what would you say? Like, how would you compare? It's kind of apples and oranges because it's different years, but are you comparing the athletic ability, the amount of eye grabbing plays, because I know athletes have gotten bigger, faster, stronger, right? In 2022, it's 20 years ago. So how would you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're right. The athletes are bigger, faster, stronger. I don't know that Boston. I don't know that Boston was much of a different team championship game. Without their starting quarterback.
Okay.
She's fantastic.
Yeah,
she really is.
Yeah.
She's very good at what she does. Their backup quarterback is even a bigger threat running wise.
Yeah.
So Boston is loaded. I'm not gonna. You can't deny that at all.
Yeah.
They are a class organization. I got a chance to. We played them this year, so I got a chance to see them up close. I got a chance to scout them. Right. I talked to their coaching staff a little bit, and Pittsburgh's the same thing. Pittsburgh, when you take a year off and you come back and get to the conference championship game, that team's going to be a monster also. They are fantastic, but understand that we played them the same types of Pittsburgh and Boston teams quite a few times as the Demolition. Pittsburgh's team quarterbacks, Pittsburgh's coaching staff has changed a bit. Boston's changed over 3 or 4 times now. You find your niche, and Pittsburgh and and Boston are the organizations. They work at a different level from warm-ups to post-game.
Mm-hmm.
You see a different level of football.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's something that you don't see from the smaller teams. You don't see from in the WFA, the Division III and divisions. Those teams are very good at what they do. I have a former player that is one of the coaches for the Cap City Savages in the WFA.
Okay.
And Leslie was our center, and she is a tremendous coach, and that team is coming along. You get to a championship game, no matter you win or lose, you've gotten to the last game. That's a fantastic season. Do they do things the same way Boston does? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Not a chance.
And that seems to be the difference between the Detroit Demolition back in 2002 when they were the danger, right up to 2009. It operated at a different level. There were teams across the NWFL, NWFA, and the IWFL that did the same thing the teams in the WFA are doing with Boston. Oh, we got Detroit. We got you guys. And then you get to a championship game, and I got a picture over there, 74-0 in Papa John Stadium.
Yeah.
There's just a different level, and that's where Boston and Pittsburgh and Tampa is getting the same situation. And I didn't see a lot of the West Coast teams, or the Western teams. Minnesota's the same thing, but the difference is the level of coaching and the level of commitment the players are willing to do in the off season that you can see just in their warm-ups, the difference in the teams.
Gotcha.
So, that's different. There's always a great team in every era. Now, I did my homework, especially in the Midwest. I know I was a sports goof when I was a kid, so I knew of the Detroit Demons, but I had also heard of the Toledo Troopers.
Uh-huh.
And Toledo was the Detroit and the Boston of their era. And one of their players, Mitchie Collette, is a friend of mine. She and that Toledo team, they don't have the player base, but they certainly have the player history. They certainly have the team history. So once you start finding out how dominant these teams were in the past, when you get a chance to see some video, I'll send you some DVDs of some of the videos of the Demolition, and then you start looking up the Toledo Troopers. There's not a lot of film left of them.
Right.
You start seeing the same situations with these teams where the coaching and the players were just at a different level. So while we try to compare, and it's tough to compare athletes from different eras,
right?
There's that same camaraderie, that same team effort, that same team. Every player willing to go the extra mile. Every player willing to do the extra lap. Every player willing to spend an extra half hour.
More buy-in.
Makes a difference.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, you answered my follow-up question. My follow-up question was going to be, since there is a different level and it's noticeable for these teams, and unfortunately they're pretty rare in our sport. Well, I was going to ask you, what do you think that attributes to? Like, why is that? Like, what separates them? And you kind of answered it. You said it, comes down to a higher level of coaching, more buy-in from the players, more commitment, more of an all-in mentality. And so,
one of the things that I've also found, and this is a slap straight at us. It is. I'm going to slap the coaches right now. I'm calling all the coaches out. If you as a coach are so unsure of yourself, if you're so unsure of your level of coachability, what are you doing? There are coaches that can use your help.
Yeah.
There are coaches that need to be far more open about what they're doing to make women's football better. I don't care if you're a male coach or female coach. I had 4 different coaches call me in the postseason and ask for my help to look at film. 4 different coaches. I'm willing to help anybody. I don't care. But you have to be open to criticism and to stop thinking everybody that you know everything about football. And I'm not talking just to you. I'm talking about to the coaching staff, to the coaching staffs. You don't know everything about football.
Yeah.
If you did, you'd be hosting a coaching clinic,
right,
and making millions of dollars in another league.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's fair.
Coaching staffs have got to be willing to help others.
Yeah, I think the tough thing, Coach, with that is, since women's football is at a place where payers are paying to play, and coaches are volunteer coaches. So, like, for a coach, you're volunteering a lot of time and energy and effort, and it's something you're not being paid for. So you need to do something. You need to have a job that pays the bills. If you have a mortgage, it's still got to be paid. And so it's a big time commitment. I love football so much, and I love coaching, and I love my team, that I don't consider that a burden in any way whatsoever. The gas prices aren't ideal, but it is what it is. It's a first world problem. So I don't consider that really a negative. But to that point, since you have volunteer coaches, it's kind of a tall task, right? How are you going to put together a really solid coaching staff, championship caliber coaching staff, with a bunch of guys that are volunteering their time? And sometimes, you have a guy that's an awesome player, and he can't coach, or he can do it, but he can't coach it. You know what I'm saying? So it's not easy to put that together. I think I'm fortunate to be on a team that's, heading in the right direction. We'll get into the numbers, because you kind of reminded me some stuff when we were talking about the old Detroit days, and I'm glad I wasn't able to relate to that until recently. But now I am able to. And so I can't wait to get into that. Before we get into details like that, let's talk about Detroit teams. So you said was a Detroit Danger?
The Detroit Danger became the Detroit Demolition. Yeah, it was. We had the first incarnation of women's football was the Detroit Danger.
Yeah,
had an owner that was that was dabbling with other teams also. So he had now, and I just found this out this year, that he owned a couple of other teams also. So that team won its championship, went 10-1, move along. Some players take over, they find another owner, and it took off from that point.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately, the Danger / Demolition had as many owners as nearly as they had seasons in play.
Really? Wow.
Yep.
It's kind of surprising, because from what you told me about the Demolition, they were an elite, once in a lifetime, dominant women's tackle football team for an era. So for them to be that successful for 5 years straight or 6 years straight, however long that was.
Yep.
When you're that successful, usually you don't see a lot of change, because there's no, you know what I mean? Like, things aren't going wrong. So why would you know what I'm saying?
Injuries are huge.
Yeah.
One of the first things that first year I was on the radio at the time. So I was on the air from 2 to 7.
Yeah.
And it was, it was okay. The show was good. The ratings were great. We had a great time.
Yeah.
So I had to split my time a lot. Thank God we were practicing, after my shift was over.
Right.
But there was from that spring to the championship game, there was I understood there was very, very little time, but the little time that I had away from the radio station, away from doing my shift or doing my show, whatever you want to call it, I was learning about women's sports. Now, in my radio career, I had been down in Lafayette, Indiana, so I had covered Purdue women's sports. I covered Purdue men's sports. I had been around it so much, but once you start coaching women, there is, as a man playing, as a boy playing, as a young boy playing, you understand what your body can and cannot do.
Right.
And yeah, I'm not going to get into the whole male-female situation, but women's sports open up an entirely different physical injury problem for the women. Okay. Women have issues with knee joints, and that's known through basketball. It's known through volleyball. It's being found out now a little bit more with women's football, women's lacrosse, women's field hockey. They've all had these issues with women's knees. So there's been studies done. Well, I had gotten a hold of a couple of those studies, and I'm learning about it. So, right away, let's start working on knee structure and strength. So that process took us deeper into learning how to coach women, learning how to play women. It helped a lot. If that's answering the question, we just got to a deeper level on what we wanted to do. But we also didn't stop doing our jobs. We didn't stop. There was no pause there. We just had to adapt to what we were doing on a greater level.
Gotcha. So that's very interesting. And you're not the first person that's told me that. So there's a guy, John Konecki, who was Chicago Forces head coach.
Yes.
They were very successful he was on my podcast recently, actually. And he talked about something similar to that. Talked about how if he was coaching women's football again, one of the first things he would address is strength around your neck for women. And I think he mentioned knee too. There's like 2 or 3 things he mentioned. But I know neck was one of them, and knee was one of them.
Yeah, neck, knee, hip, and elbow.
Yeah. So he said that's one of his starting points is he would have a plan for how he's going to, coach and train around that to put his players in the best position to stay healthy, to finish the season. And you know what I'm saying? Because unfortunately, most teams don't do that. I don't really blame them because they probably don't even know, but it should be, that information should be out there, because if you're given that information and you don't do anything with it, that's on you. But if you don't even know,
right?
If you're just ignorant that it's even an issue for women, physically, then that's a different thing. And so, I think we should try to help educate people about that, because we all want the best for the game, and it doesn't help anybody when freaking this amazing athlete is out for the season because something wasn't strong enough. And if it's preventable, then that's the least we can do. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Same page. So let's talk about Detroit Demolition before we move on to these more specific questions. You told me a little bit before about how dominant they were. But I just wanted to wrap my head around it since it was before my time. So
here, I'll give you one set of numbers, and you're going to like that. Okay. I'll give you one set of numbers. When we finished the 4th championship game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The record was 63-3.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah. At one point we were 17-2 in the playoffs. That's including a loss in a championship game. That's, it's, I don't know how anybody can get into a sport and not look at the past.
Yeah.
And not find out where you came from. If you don't know where you came from, you're going to make the same mistakes those teams have done.
Yeah.
Okay. From what I understand, the Detroit Demolition, when we finished, we were 72-7 overall. Our last was our final record. And not one owner made $1. They did nothing but lose money. Now, something ain't right, but there's a huge difference in how well, first, in the financial stability of this country right now, as opposed to what it was in 2002. The city of Detroit was a financial disaster. Yeah. Companies in the city of Detroit weren't able to punch in big money.
Yeah.
And there are so many pitfalls that each league led to having more and more issues that it left women's football, scampering to the closest home they could find. So the Demolition were a product of that time. Hard edge city, hard edge women playing football, coaches that didn't coach like we were coaching women at all. There's a picture I have in my man cave of our head coach, Tony Blankenship, who was also our DC, and Misty Findley, who was, I believe, in the Women's Football Hall of Fame right now. It was one of the greatest linebackers of women's football, bar none, and a great kicker also. And he is blowing up in her face, just there was a phrase in every preseason meeting, in every preseason interview. It's not personal. Nothing is personal. This is football. It was a different. They say it's a different era back then. It's not. It's not.
You don't think so?
What else did you want to know about the Demolition? Tell me.
So I want to know. You said the record was 67-7. You won 4 championships or 5?
5. We won 4 in a row. Got beat in Long Beach by a very good Atlanta team, and then came back the following year and beat Atlanta in Atlanta. So we took it back.
Gotcha.
We were 63-3 at that point.
Yeah. So you're 5 championships in 6 years.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's pretty dominant. So I guess my last question about them before we move on is, how would you describe that team? Because there's no time machine, right? I wish I could go back and watch Detroit Demolition versus Atlanta or whoever, right?
Yeah. I'll send you that DVD. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah, but like, how did it feel, Coach? Did it feel elite? Did it feel like your shit didn't stink? Like, how, you know what I mean? How did you feel as a coach on that team? Like, was there like a brashness and like, what was the vibe?
No, here was the vibe, and I will credit Tony Blankenship, his brother Joe, and every one of the coaches that we had. There was never a time, even after a championship game.
Yeah.
After our championship game, a week later, we had we were breaking it down. Most of us coached a high school season immediately after, and most of us stayed together.
Right.
I still coach to this day with our running back coach and one of the former offensive coordinators. With him to this day in high school. Coach Blankenship just called me about 2 weeks ago about coming and helping him, and getting the gang back together. And, all of us have kind of stuck together in bits and pieces all over the place. But no, you had your final team coaches meeting, what we wanted to work on, what we needed to work on. So there was never a let's sit back and relax. There was, what are we doing next? First meeting, one of the things we told the veterans, the veterans meeting was, if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. You have to get better or you're going to get worse. If you're not getting better, somebody else is. If you're not recruiting, somebody else is. That team, no matter what football team you are, I don't care if you're in the NFL, I don't care who you are, Pop Warner.
Yeah.
When you go on a run like the Demolition did, and you're playing the last game every single year, your body is broke. And these women tested themselves in the off season. So they were out, they'll go out doing tryouts. They're doing little camps for Boys and Girls Club. They're doing these things. So they were never far away from football. They would shut down. They'd take a couple months off. But when you got back into camp, we never started camp before the last week of January. But we practiced 3 nights a week, and 2 nights were pretty much conditioning days. Yeah. We conditioned them all the time, mid-season conditioning. So it was never, there was never a letdown. There was never a time to sit back and go, yeah, damn, we're good. Nah, it was, how can we be better next week? How can we be better next month? How can we be better recruiting? It was a challenge from Tony Blankenship to every one of his coaches to get better every single week.
So last question about Demolition. What would you attribute their domination to? Would you say it was a rare coaching staff? Would you say they got lucky to have a whole bunch of rare athletes? Would you say it was the right mixture of a tough group of Detroit people at the right time, right period? Would you say them emphasizing conditioning so much when most teams don't gave them an advantage? Like, would you say it's all the above? Like, what would you attribute that to?
I don't think any coaching staff that is worth a shit is going to tell you it's all about the coaches. No. Okay. You can be, hey, look, Bill Belichick ain't kicking them field goals. Bill Belichick ain't sitting in the back throwing a football. Okay. Yeah. He's coming up with a great plan that fits his players. Those players have got to make that commitment. And that's what it was. We had some hard-nosed women that went on to play for other teams. You talked about the Chicago Force. April Folks, one of the biggest offensive linemen in the league. She was every bit of 5'11", every bit of 365 was our pulling guard.
Yeah. She
was a monster. She went and played in Chicago. Okay. Yeah. But she was also a hard worker. We talked about, Kim Grotus and Danielle Gavin. They were two of the hardest working quarterbacks around. Right. Boston will tell you the same thing, man. There's nobody taking any of their conditioning off, and so was it the coaching staff? Yes. Was it the players? Even more so. But you can't, if you don't condition, you're not going to play in the final game of the season. And they can complain all they want. Everybody, look at the NFL getting paid millions of dollars a player, and they're complaining about working out.
Yeah.
The NFLPA cut 2-a-days completely out. Players don't want to have to work hard, especially in the heat. But players don't want to work hard, especially in practice, because they just want to get to the end product, forgetting that it takes all that work to get to that end product and be a champion.
Yeah. It's kind of that links to America's society in general, right? Because we have a very, very like self-serving, instant gratification. That's how the American society is in general. So naturally that would bleed into these women's teams, because these women's teams are filled with mostly people from America's society.
Right.
Yeah. So it makes sense.
I have a couple phrases that I always use about football, and I always try to write it on the board, either to my quarterbacks or if I'm in a meeting and I'm able to do it to the team. Football is not necessarily a gift sport. Okay. You can be a gifted athlete and be a really great football player. But you can also be a very gifted athlete and be a shitty football player with a shitty attitude. So what I try to write on the board is football is a want to sport.
Yeah.
You have to want to be great. You have to want to tackle. You have to want to throw a perfect spiral. You have to want to run through a line. You have to want to decleat somebody on a tackle. You have to want to play football. And if you don't have that want 24/7, 365,
Yeah.
There's the door. You have to want to play football.
Gotcha.
When you put a helmet and shoulder pads on, it is no longer social time.
Yeah.
It's football time.
Yeah, it's different mentality. So last question about Demolition. I lied.
Yep.
I have one more question.
That's fine.
Who were your biggest rivals during that era?
Oh, God.
Like who'd you have circled on the calendar? Who gave you your toughest games? Who didn't you like? Who, you know what I mean?
We never looked at an opponent and their record.
Okay.
We looked at players. We scouted players hard.
Mm-hmm.
I tell Phil Benamino, who was the head coach in Atlanta, that I knew Atlanta as well as I knew our team. Okay. It's a fact. I knew DC pretty well. Okay.
Yeah.
And DC and back then, DC and Philadelphia kind of switched a couple players. One moved to, it was so as you're thinking about playing Philadelphia, the Bells at the time, all of a sudden we have one of the women in the Philadelphia backfield playing for DC. It's like, well, I guess, okay, we got this going. So it was never who was going to be our biggest rival. They really tried to push regional rivalries in the NWFA and in the IWFL.
Yeah.
But we played Pensacola a couple of times. Once for a conference championship game, and then once in a national world championship game.
Mm-hmm.
DC was really good. Pittsburgh came on in 2000, and they were a good team. The Sirens were great from the West Coast. It's interesting coming up with these and hearing these names again and these teams. We played Boston, the Mass Mutiny in our first championship and beat them. So it was really whoever was in front of us was our biggest rival, because we had pride on our side. We didn't want to lose a game.
Yeah, week to week. Trying to go 1-0 every week.
Absolutely. And it's funny because we're going to play this team. We got this team coming now. And you know who you got? You got this team. The next team you have is who you have. You don't worry about 2 weeks from now. You don't know, hey, we may now not be here in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's a good way to approach it for sure. All right. So moving on. Now we're done with Demolition. I appreciate you answering all those nosy questions. So I wanted to talk to you about the WFA weekend. I'm not sure how much you're willing to share about, ideas you have for the game or for maybe a possible, whatever. I don't want to overspeak, but whatever you're willing to share. I want to talk about WFA weekend, how that went. I was able to connect you with a person that works for the WNFC. So hopefully that was beneficial to you as far as kind of learning what they've accomplished. I'm obviously a pretty big fan of WNFC.
Right.
But I wanted you to just talk about WFA, your opinion of women's football in general, WNFC, and then whatever you're willing to share about your ideas for the future.
Okay. So, I pride myself on being relatively cerebral about what I do. Maybe it's my upbringing. Maybe it's, maybe it's the quarterback in me. If I can prepare myself for everything, every possibility, at least I don't have to worry about what might be coming at me. I have to worry about what I have to do to stop that.
Yeah.
But that goes with everything in life also. If I don't know anything about the WNFC, how do I know what's there?
Yeah,
you see, there was a point in time, and I'm going to go back to the Demolition here. There was a point in time with the Demolition where, we're on this winning streak, and, you got other teams barking, and at the time you had the Dallas Diamonds who were a great team.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, isn't Dallas Elite for the WNFC like a sister of that team somehow? I don't know.
That's a little bit of a stretch. So some players
Okay.
that played for the Dallas Diamonds back then, that were some of the best players, have been involved. Like OJ Jenkins played for them, I'm pretty sure, and she's the CEO and the head coach of the best team in the WNC.
Right.
So she's pretty much the reason the league started. And
Right. So, and that's what I'm getting at. See, we knew of the Dallas Diamonds because we were busy doing our homework about what's going on in women's football.
Yeah.
So, there was a point in time when I was sitting in the office of the owner's business that he had going on. Yeah. And there was a pretty big debate football wise about, did we want to actually just tell the league to FO and we're going to play Dallas? Let's go meet in the middle of someplace and let's go. Let's figure this out, but you had both leagues like, oh, no, you're not. No, you're not. Well, you know what? What would have happened?
They can't do anything about it.
Exactly. Now everything's all for debate. Yeah. All it had to do was what is the biggest issue with football, period. Mm-hmm. Pop Warner, Little League, mm-hmm. high school, women's pro, men's college, men's NFL, from the lowest to the top. Yeah. The biggest problem with football is the egos it creates.
Yeah.
Now, one of our former offensive coordinators for the Detroit Demolition is now a coach with the Miami Dolphins. I can call him right now and talk to him and pick it up and ask. If I'm going to talk to the WFA, and we played in that league this year, and I don't know anything about a future about anything. I'm not a part of the Venom's ownership staff, so I don't know. Yeah. But if I don't know what's out there, how can I have one of my players come up to me and say, Coach, honestly, what do you think of this? What do you think of this league? What do you think of this team? What don't I know? And that's one of the reasons I reached out to you. That's one of the reasons I will reach out to Ms. King. I'm friends with Facebook for a few people from the WFA league. And it's not that they're withholding info. Nobody is. Mm-hmm. When I reach out, I generally get an honest answer. I don't think national secrets are being kept by women's football.
What do you mean by that?
I think women's football has done itself a disservice by being so focused on themselves that they lose focus on women's football.
Gotcha.
WFA weekend, I call a friend of mine. We coached together in 2002 with the Detroit Danger. Tell him, listen, I have some ideas. I want you to come see this. Oh, dude, I don't know. Now, he's a former NFL player. He was drafted by the Raiders, Chargers, played for the, Raiders, released, went to Denver prior to playing the Raiders, went and played in Green Bay. To this day, I still think holds the interception record for a game for Green Bay. Played in Tampa and in Detroit. He's still a Lions alumni. Told him what I was thinking. He's like, all right, you know what? So he calls me Friday afternoon. Look, man, I'm coming down. I want to see this. Okay. He sits down next to me, and the D3 game is going on, and we sat and talked, and championship's done. D2 game is done.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh man, all right, look, we're going to get out of here. I'll call you tomorrow. Let me know what happens in the D1 game. He gets to his car and calls me and says, you know what? What hotel are you guys staying at? I'm going to stay for the pro team championship.
Yeah.
Football players will always, if they travel, they're going to stay as long as they possibly can for every bit of football they can.
Right.
In the process of him going to a hotel, he calls a buddy of his who is in Panama now, and says, I want you to see this. So he punches it up, watches it online, and immediately after the championship game, after Boston gets their fourth, this NFL player turns to me, and now we know each other as coaches, so it's a different level. All right.
Yep.
He looks at me and he says, "What's changed?" And I went, "You know what, man? That's exactly what I've been saying since I started watching the Detroit Dark Angels 2 years ago, when I started to get this interest back. What's changed?"
Not much.
Now, here's an NFL player, got an NFL retirement package. Okay. He was around the league for 9 years, so he's got the full package. And he looks at me and he tells me, "What's changed?" Now, in 20 years, how different is the NFL game from 20 years ago to today? It's like night and day.
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
So that was my reach out to you. That was my reach out to the WNFC. That's my reach out to coaches and players of the WFA that I know already. I'll talk to anybody about it. Do I see opportunity? Absolutely. So does Robert Kraft. So does Bill Belichick. They see the opportunity. And if you're going to tell me there's only 32 other women's football teams in this country, I'll nod along and let you go about your business. Okay?
Yeah.
But there's 31 other NFL teams, and each of those teams have women's teams around them.
That's true. Gotcha.
Yeah, somebody's going to have to make this work. And it can't be another 20 years.
So the follow-up question is, what did you learn about the WNFC by talking to Morgan? And was that conversation, like, how useful was it to you? Like, were you surprised by anything? Were you impressed? Did they accomplish certain things, or do you think it was all kind of a wash based on what you've seen before?
Here's the thing. I had been asking questions, and there's players that have gone back and forth, and I do my due diligence. I'm not going to go into even asking questions that I don't have an idea of what's going on. Okay. I think both leagues are doing a great job of getting the league and getting women's football out there. Okay. Is there more to do? Absolutely. And I think both leagues know that.
Always.
What do I know about the WNFC that shocked me or that was informative? Yeah. Listen, I think OJ's got herself a situation where people are recognizing what the WNFC is. Okay. But there is a legitimate AFL NFL situation here. Okay. There's far too much money being spent out of pockets of players that end their careers. And I'm going to say, and this is not scientific, I'm going to say at least 50% of the leagues, women that play, that pay up to $3,000-$4,000 a year out of their pocket, never get another day of football in their lives, be it coaching, be it playing, being coaching women's football, no matter where they're going to coach. That's an investment in themselves that you don't even make, that most people don't make in their retirement. $3,000 for entertainment to beat myself up. Now, you and I both know football careers last 5 to 6 to 7 years, let's call it. And it takes that many years or more off your life. No studies yet for women's football. Getting back to what your question was, what does the WNFC, the positives? There's a lot positive. I love the fact that the league itself is trying to help these teams grow. They have a business plan that's helping the league, the teams grow. And I'm not saying the WFA isn't. I'm saying that it's a forethought with the WNFC. You guys have what is probably going to be 15 to 18 teams this next year.
Yep.
Give or take.
Yeah, about 18 teams.
You know, the WFA is going to end up with 70, 72.
Yeah.
You're talking about women who are looking now for name, image, and likeness, and the opportunities in mass aren't there right now. Now, you're going to have some teams do better than others. Okay. Dallas Elite's going to have a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Boston's going to have a whole bunch. They already do. DC, for what they have, they're getting a boatload. But that doesn't mean, the women in Oregon are doing anything, or New Mexico, or Kentucky, or Tennessee, or Florida. There needs to be a hard, honest look from both leagues as to what the end game is going to be, besides a championship weekend that everyone pats themselves on the back in. That's great. That's fantastic. But let's be honest. That's what needs to change.
Well, I think the long-term goal for the WNFC is to eventually get players paid to play football, instead of paying to play, which has been the case forever. So I think that is a long-term goal. I can't speak for them. I don't work for them, but I just, I know what I know. So I think they're very genuine with having that as a goal. Now, how quickly or if or when that happens, I couldn't tell you. I'm all in with women's football. I want to see it grow, and I want to see the players treated accordingly, how they should be treated, financially and otherwise. And so I'm on board with that whole thing. But for me to guess if and when that happens, it's hard to say, man, because, you have to have a lot of financial backing for that to be realistic. And unfortunately, the game doesn't have an excess of that from what I've seen. And so,
and that's therein lies my biggest question. Why?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely valid points. Last two things I wanted to ask you about, Coach, before I let you, I know it's getting close to your bedtime. Thanks for sticking around.
I'm good.
Is it fair to assume you're a Detroit Lions fan?
Let's see. How do you do this? When you're born in Detroit, there's a certain amount of home team you have to be a part of.
Yeah.
There is a constant joke with the Detroit fans that you always have the Lions, but you have your second team. The second you start playing football, and as you progress up and up and up and get to whatever level you get to, you realize you enjoy the game, and it doesn't matter what team. But yeah, I to this moment I am, and I'm a little pissed. I'm missing Hard Knocks already. So
Okay. Yeah.
no, it's good.
I'm recording that. So same
Oh,
page.
good. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I mean, overall, I've always been a Lions fan. I will always be a Lions fan. It's, it's in our blood.
Do you feel hopeful about the team this year, or it's hard to say?
Oh, well, if you watch Hard Knocks, and I'm going to tell you what's going to happen.
Tell me.
Yes, I'm very hopeful for this team. Okay.
This year or in general?
This year and in general. I think this year is going to be a very interesting year. I think Dan Campbell and his staff, when you look at his staff, here's what I'll tell you. I'll take Dan Campbell versus the rest of the field in a workout or for any other head coach. They can fight whatever you want. I'll take Dan Campbell. Okay.
Me too, man.
But I'll also take the Lions coaching staff in a flag football game against any other NFL coaching staff. That staff is ridiculous. Are you kidding me?
So
80 years worth of experience.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I'm a huge Aaron Glenn fan.
Yeah.
Huge Deuce Staley fan. I was a fan of theirs when they were playing. And, you got Antoine Randall L. You got Mark Brunell.
Yeah.
I got to try to get in touch with him before the season starts because quarterback coach to quarterback coach, he's that entire, as a football player, you want to go play right now. I'm broke. My hips need replacing. My knees are shot. I will go play for that team right now.
Yeah.
They don't have to pay me.
It's funny you say that, Coach, because when I got done watching the first episode of Hard Knocks, I messaged my buddy back in Ohio, who's a football coach as well. And he was telling me about how much he likes Dan Campbell. And I said, listen, man, I just got done watching the first episode. I want to go play for Dan Campbell right now. And I'm not even playing football. You know what I'm saying? Like he's everything you would want in a coach, in a person. He's all in, he's invested, he's genuine. He's a good coach. I mean, I don't know how
he's honest.
Yeah.
And he's honest. And that's such a huge thing for a coach. I mean, listen, you have to know where you stand with your with your position coach and with your head coach.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what the GM thinks of you. It doesn't matter what the player personnel guy thinks of you. If your head coach can trust you to do what you need to do, or if he can tell you, listen, you need to work on this. If you can't get this week, there's the door, guy. I'm sorry. And that's the kind of guy he seems to be. But he also understands the Lions' struggles. The guy played here. He played here in an 0-16 season. So he knows what the shit is here.
He's lived it. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
But he also knows the fan base. I'm going to tell you, if this team is in the hunt for the playoffs in December this year, Detroit will be unbearably Lions, Honolulu blue and silver. It'll be sick.
Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough, man. Well, I have a couple more questions. I'm just going to send you a message offline about, just to button up some last things, but I really appreciate your time, Coach. We covered a lot, going back to your childhood, playing and coaching women's football, Detroit Demolition, all the way up until currently. One of the last things I want to tell you is, since I'm a fan of women's football in general, I personally was bothered that the Detroit Venom and the St. Louis Slam were not in the playoffs this year. And so let me just put that out there, because that didn't sit well with me, which I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir. But I think, there's arguments. There's arguments for both teams. Okay, you can see right there the Venom helmet. Yes and no. You see both sides.
I see St. Louis's issue. I see Detroit's issue. League decisions are league decisions. But if you think this is the first time a league has F Detroit,
No.
I got story. How is Detroit the Western Conference champion?
Yeah.
Coming out of the Eastern Conference.
Right. Fair enough. All right, Coach. Well, I'll let you get going, but
All right, Jerry.
I appreciate your time. I'm going to have my editor crank this out on Wednesday. I'll be releasing it on Friday, so I'll tag you on Facebook. But it's been a pleasure, and we'll definitely stay in touch.
Oh, Terry, absolutely, man. Thanks so much. Hey, you need anything else, give me a call, man. You got my number. You just give me a call. Obviously, I'm pretty open and honest. Sometimes to my detriment, but it's okay. I got big shoulders. I can handle it.
I appreciate you, man. Talk to you soon.